I, 29F, have been married to my husband, Harry, for the past 7 years. I love everything about our marriage, except the fact that he is related to his sister, Kayla, who brings all the negativity into our lives. Now, don't get me wrong. I used to love Kayla when I first got to know her, but over time, I quickly changed my opinion. She is incredibly negative, manipulative, and toxic. I have worked hard for years to avoid getting on her bad side because I know the kind of person she is. In the past, my husband had dated his best friend's sister when he was 17, and later, they broke up because he felt pressured into being with her by his sister. When he turned 23 and found himself single, his sister insisted that he and her other friend should be together, but he refused. They had a huge fight, and she went crying to their parents about how she wanted him to marry someone she felt comfortable with, but his parents didn't really listen to her. When my husband and I met and fell in love, his parents were very supportive, but his sister consistently treated me with a cold demeanor whenever I was around. She would always bring up Harry's exes for no reason and tell him how well they were doing and how he should get back in touch with them. This went on for a while, and I was not the only one who found this weird. Harry found it weird, too. So, he would ask her not to bring up his exes. She would then get pissed and start taunting me about how I was getting jealous and how he should not be with someone insecure like me. Whenever his parents would call us for dinner, his sister would purposefully bring up one of Harry's exes, telling us how she had run into them that day by accident and had to invite them for dinner out of politeness. She also checked my Instagram relentlessly, even though she didn't follow me. I have a public account, so I noticed she was always the first person to view my story. If a guy commented on my photo, she would go to her brother and complain about how I was posting inappropriate pictures of myself. Harry and I would literally laugh at her accusations. When Harry and I decided to move in together, she urged him to break up with me, telling him how I had a lot of flaws as a woman and that she could find someone much better than me. This comment honestly hurt me, since I had been nothing but nice to her throughout everything. Unfortunately, as soon as Harry and I got engaged, her behavior towards me got even worse. When Harry and I announced our engagement, everyone started congratulating us. I noticed Kayla was very quiet, and then she got up from her chair and walked out of our party to everyone's shock. Later, she called Harry, crying and screaming about how she didn't appreciate being told the news with everyone else since she thought he was the closest to her and deserved to be the first one to know about his engagement. Later, she sent me a message that was almost borderline threatening, saying how I should be a good wife to her brother since she had always been the only woman in his life. The message was so weird that I almost cringed. I didn't even bother replying back to her and left her message on read, which I know must have pissed her off even more. Kayla started to gradually ignore me anytime she saw me. For some reason, she remained involved with all the wedding activities, like when I went dress shopping and had my bridal shower. She took her criticism of the wedding to a whole new level, openly expressing her discontent with my choices despite both my future mother-in-law and fiancé calling her out on it multiple times. Her behavior persisted. One day, while discussing the centerpiece with my future mother-in-law, Kayla overheard and immediately began to mock me, saying how my choice had no class and how this was why she wanted her brother to marry someone better. That was the breaking point for me, and I lost my composure. I screamed at her that I couldn't tolerate her constant taunts and criticisms any longer, and I made it clear to her that she was not invited to our wedding anymore. Kayla was shocked, gasping in disbelief as if she had never expected me to stand up to her. Even my mother-in-law was furious with her and supported me. Later, Kayla reached out to Harry, complaining about how I embarrassed her and insisting that he should control me since I was going to be his wife. Harry told her firmly that he stood by my decision and that if she didn't apologize, she was not going to be invited to the wedding. Begrudgingly, she sent me a heartfelt apology, which I saw and again left on read. With my wedding preparations, I was already exhausted, and I didn't want to be involved with her drama. In the end, she did end up coming to our wedding because I didn't want her to badmouth us later. Now, my wedding had a certain theme of pink hues and pastels, which everyone seemed to have no trouble following, including the guests. However, Kayla showed up wearing a black, floor-length gown with a veil as if she was coming for a funeral. We were shocked, to say the least. Kayla went around telling everyone how she was mourning for losing her brother to another woman. During the reception, my husband could see that I was uncomfortable with Kayla's wedding outfit and confronted her about it. She tried to play the victim by saying that she had the right to wear whatever she wanted and that I was too controlling. In the end, my mother-in-law and father-in-law asked her to leave when she wouldn't stop making a scene. It was humiliating for me, and ever since that day, I have steered clear of her. When I gave birth to my son, Nate, I refused to allow Kayla anywhere near our baby. She did try to fight it, but my husband and his parents had my back. They understood exactly why I didn't want Kayla near my baby and respected my decision. 2 years ago, Kayla had a miscarriage with her then boyfriend, Jamie, and it completely broke her. It was indeed a sad time for everyone. Harry and I felt sad for her since we already had a child, so after her miscarriage, we decided to be a bit more forgiving. We would invite her to our place so she could bond with our son, Nate. I have to say that she has been surprisingly sweet to our son, despite how she behaves with me. In the beginning, she seemed to have changed, but over time, she went right back to who she was before. She's always going on about how tough her life is, how things never seem to work out for her, blaming ex-bosses or ex-friends for messing things up in her life. Over time, I have noticed that in her head, she is never wrong. She rarely admits to any fault in conflicts and is constantly trying to get people on her side by playing the victim card. This year, she decided to get married and invited everyone except us. Harry was shocked to find out that we were not invited, since our relationship seemed to be better. When we questioned her about it, she started to say how she could not allow me to come since I might do something to upstage her wedding. I did call and ask her why she would think something like that when I have never done anything to her. Kayla started to say how she had knowingly dressed up in all black to our wedding, so now she was afraid that I might do the same, and this is why she didn't want me at her wedding. I was furious about how manipulative she was and straight up told my husband about this. Harry talked with his parents, and they decided to tell Kayla that they would neither pay for the wedding nor attend. This reduced Kayla to tears, and she started blaming me for creating this fiasco. My husband informed her that she had shamelessly admitted her own mistake, so she had no right to be pointing fingers at me. But Kayla justified her actions, saying that our wedding happened a long time ago and that I should just get over it. Later, since my in-laws were still refusing to pay for her wedding, she reached out to apologize to me and beg for forgiveness. I hate to admit this, but Kayla can be very sweet and persuasive when she wants something. I forgave her and wanted to just move on from the past. Her wedding with Jamie went well, we all attended and had a good time. Not even 6 months later, Kayla was at our doorstep, complaining about how our marriage was falling apart. Harry and I let her stay with us for a few days, where she would vent for hours on end about her husband. They seemed to be having issues with getting pregnant, and Kayla was clearly blaming Jamie for everything. I tried to talk to Kayla, but she was adamant that it was all her husband's fault. When she was not complaining about her husband, she would be hyper-focused on our lives and try to make up things that didn't exist. For example, I generally go to the gym every morning before going to work. Sometimes when I am running late, I take my work clothes so I can finish my workout, take a bath, and change into my work attire. Kayla noticed this for some time and would ask me a lot of questions about it, like why I was taking a bath or why I even needed to go to the gym. I didn't think much about it, but one day she showed up, acting surprised that I was changing in my bathroom. She told me how I should take care of myself more since my husband deserves better. I was already getting annoyed, so I told her that my husband was doing just fine. Kayla seemed to take that personally and started bad-mouthing my husband, suggesting he could be doing more to make me appreciate the things she did for him in the past. I told her that we didn't need her advice, since Harry and I had our own dynamic. After that day, she stopped coming over so often, but still continued to make passive-aggressive remarks when we did see her. Years ago, Harry and I had some exciting news to share with everyone. With smiles on our faces, we announced that we were expecting a baby. The room fell quiet for a moment before everyone erupted in happiness. My mother started crying, rushing over to hug me, while Phil had tears running down their face as they congratulated both me and Harry. Everyone was thrilled for us, eagerly asking if we had picked out baby names yet. The only awkward moment came from SIL. She stood there, stunned, and I thought maybe she needed time to process the news. But then her expression shifted, and without a word, she turned and walked away, clearly upset. I couldn't help but worry that she might ruin yet another celebration for us, but I was soon distracted by others coming over to talk to me. When it was time to serve lunch, I got up to help my in-laws bring the food out. But Rick and my parents insisted I stay seated, telling me I should rest and not lift a finger. I patiently waited for my husband to bring me a plate when Sil suddenly appeared, beaming. She had a plate of food in her hands, and with a smile, she loudly announced that she personally wanted to serve me since she was so happy about my pregnancy. She even said she wanted to make up for how rude she'd been to me in the past. I nodded and graciously accepted the plate. But as I was about to dig in, I noticed something off. She had put shrimp on my plate. It's well known that I am highly allergic to shrimp, so I was immediately taken aback. I shook my head in disappointment, and, feeling uneasy, I got up to get my own food. Just then, Jamie came over to congratulate me, and we chatted for a moment. He asked why I wasn't eating, so I explained how Sil had served me shrimp, probably by mistake. Jamie reassured me not to worry and took the plate from my hands, telling me he liked shrimp and would eat it while I got a new plate for myself. It wasn't even 5 minutes later that Jamie began to vomit, clutching his throat in distress. The room went silent as he stumbled, trying to stand. Harry and Kayla rushed over in alarm. Jamie pointed at the plate and then at his throat, and we all immediately realized something was terribly wrong. Jamie collapsed, and the room gasped in shock. Kayla began crying uncontrollably, glancing at me with anger in her eyes. We called for an ambulance, and Jamie was rushed to the hospital. The next few hours were a blur. My husband and I were bombarded with questions from family members, wondering what had happened to Jamie and who might have poisoned him. Mill and Phil were shaken, staying with us for the night out of fear. No one understood what had happened, and the air was thick with confusion and dread. I felt a deep sense of guilt, wondering if I could have done something differently. I had no idea that the plate I had been served could have been meant for me, or that SIL could have poisoned me and my baby. The police took the food as evidence, as no one knew what had been used to make Jamie so ill. The next few days were a whirlwind of calls, concern, and fear, but the truth was beginning to surface. As I write this, Jamie is still recovering in the hospital, while Kayla stayed by his side. My husband and I have been answering calls from family and friends, all asking what happened. Mill and Phil are still reeling from the shock of it all, and I'm left wondering what SIL's intentions were. The situation is becoming more and more serious, and I fear what this means for me and my unborn child. How far is she willing to go? My fear for my family's safety has reached new heights. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit notification bell to stay updated.